there is no better time, in my opinion, than right now to invest in your digital brand. If that's LinkedIn, if that's Twitter, if that's, TikTok or something else, because, the market's a little slower right now. Deal flow is a lot slower for many investors and syndicators out there.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yonah Weiss. Grateful to be here today with another awesome guest. Really excited to have Jesse Futia on the show. Welcome, my man. What's going on?
Yonah, I appreciate you having me on, brother. To share the stage with you today is a privilege for being one of the main motivators on why I got on social media and started building a brand for commercial real estate and everything. So I feel like Tom Brady. I feel like I'm on a Zoom call with Tom Brady right now, and he's telling me go run a post route real quick so he can throw me a touchdown, because that's what it feels like for me. So I appreciate it.
Okay, I'll take the compliment. Thank you. I'm the Tom Brady of LinkedIn, I guess. That's the analogy. Yeah. Listen, I've been called Oprah of podcasting, so that was a good one. But no, this is really great because it's fun to kind of come full circle in a lot of ways. Because, like you said, a couple of years ago when you started out on social media, I think I was one of those early people that really pushed you and many others in a lot of ways to just get out of your comfort zone, just start posting, start seeing what the difference is. And as someone who's like yourself, who was coming from basically college, to being an entrepreneur and investing in real estate and trying to find investors, I'd love to hear, for just before we even get into that, what's a little bit of your background? I know you spent some time in the military and a real estate investor, have a whole ghostwriting company now. So I'd love to just give a little background. Who is Jesse Futia?
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of already hit the nail on the head, but I was an earlier follower of you. I mean, years ago, I think I was in one of the first LinkedIn challenges. Nobody probably knew me back then. I was probably posting once a week or once a month or something like that. But I was probably in one of the original ones, at least a couple of years ago, when we were doing it with like 20 people or something. I can't even remember how many were in that first one. But yeah, no, I'm Jesse Futia. I'm from upstate New York. I'm 27 years old. I got started in real estate in college. I was moving off campus with my college buddies, and my father and I bought my college house together, and I rented it to all of my military buddies, basically. And then I helped my father and I together scaled that portfolio to today. It's one of the largest student housing portfolios in upstate New York that we rent to college kids still today. Over the last few years, I made the jump into commercial real estate syndication, and we started syndicating RV parks, mobile home parks, and self-storage, which we do today, which is really exciting, helping investors, invest passively into real estate. And then I would say probably about 2 years ago, I'm on this journey of real estate and whatnot. And I'm like, man, I'm just this 24, 25-year-old kid like 2 years ago. And I'm like, I got to meet more, I need more investors. Sure. Like, I don't have this network that's built yet. What's a way, I'm not this millionaire that can go to all these country clubs. I don't have money to fly to every conference in the world right now. Like, I'm 24 years old. But I was like, man, this social media thing, I think there's an opportunity here, especially on LinkedIn. And this goes back to following you in the beginning days. And I was like, there's all these successful people on this platform. There's all these high net worth people on this platform. Really, there's millions and billions of dollars of equity on LinkedIn.
Right.
What is the ability to kind of start to capture this? And like a couple of years ago, I didn't really see anyone posting content in the way to like drive and attract limited partners. And I was like, wow, this could be something unique here. So, I started writing on LinkedIn 2 years ago, and for the first 6 months, then it's really didn't see any traction at all. I mean, right. Nobody probably even remembers who I was like back then, but slowly, every 6 months I began gaining more and more traction. And, over the last year, it's absolutely blown up. I've increased my investor base by hundreds of people, millions of dollars of soft commits and whatnot that have transformed into hard commits. And now today we founded a ghostwriting company where not only do obviously I write my own content and drive leads and whatnot, but now we're helping other real estate professionals and syndicators write content to help them build their brands on LinkedIn and Twitter and help them drive hundreds and really thousands of leads and raise millions of dollars, which is transforming their businesses, which is really powerful.
That's awesome. It's really taking your own experience and realizing in a lot of ways how it helped you to find more limited partners, more investors, to drive up, your business, your real estate business, and create a way to help others. And obviously, it's a new business in of itself, which is great. Mm-hmm. It's very entrepreneurial of you to do that, and I'm sure you've gotten some traction.
Yeah, it's been really powerful, and really, we founded, this company only 6 months ago. Even though I've been writing for a couple of years now, but I tell everyone I talk to on a daily basis, like there is no better time, in my opinion, than right now to invest in your digital brand. If that's LinkedIn, if that's Twitter, if that's, TikTok or something else, because, the market's a little slower right now. Deal flow is a lot slower for many investors and syndicators out there. And I tell everyone, if, we're recording this episode in the beginning of July 2023, but if you just went all in on your digital brand, from today to the end of the year, the results that you will see in 2024 because of doing that, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be 5 to 10x, because I've seen the power of this within my own brand over the last 12 months. And now the results that we're also getting for our clients over the last, 6 months or so. People don't understand the reach and leverage that digital, followership or digital brand building has. And I can't transcribe that enough to people, how powerful that is from a revenue perspective, and then also kind of like a thought leadership perspective as well.
Right. Yeah, it's such an important point. We've been talking about this for years, about the thought leadership and the branding that LinkedIn comes, and all social media. But I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here for a second, because I see a lot of marketing companies out there, and there's a lot of, you can tell sometimes when someone is, and no offense to you, obviously, but you can tell when someone is not writing their own content or writing their own comments or engaging with people, especially when you get like a DM from them and they're like a friend of yours. And then you get like this weird DM that's like pitching you to be like an investor. Like, wait a second, that's not you. That's someone else writing that on your behalf. And then you start to question the whole existence. So there's a delicate balance there. And I'm sure this is something that you've had to deal with as someone who's trying to portray the most authentic self when you're putting your best foot out there, right? You want to put your best self forward on social media, and then it comes through as your authentic self. So how do you balance that in terms of, posting a ghostwriting for others, and at the same time making sure that it is as authentic as possible?
Yeah, I think it comes down to kind of two things, for us personally. And there's probably a lot of people listening who have spent thousands of dollars on marketing companies. And I feel like, I don't want to say I feel bad for those people, but I think a big difference is the fact that I'm not a marketer. I'm a real estate investor that's just invested a ton of time into my copywriting skills. And now I'm a really good writer. So the difference with me is where, that marketing college kid that you're paying thousands of dollars probably doesn't even know what an interest rate is, nor does he even know the benefits of multifamily investing, where I've invested in all of these assets and I know the perspective to use the correct verbiage and whatnot. And then when it comes down to the authentic self, I think, for us personally, kind of the deep diving that we do for our clients is really on the next level, where we're kind of really understanding our client's story and niching down their audience and why that is kind of so powerful and whatnot. But something I actually want to bring up is, I think I've heard you say this before, Yona, and I think it's just so incredibly powerful. And I meant to mention it on our live yesterday that we did on LinkedIn, but one of the amazing benefits of posting on LinkedIn on a daily basis, I talk to so many people who are like, Jesse, I have this 1,000-person email subscriber list. You know what I mean? I don't need to post on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatnot. But I think when people are hitting their email list on a weekly basis, and I've heard you say this before, I'll paraphrase, but I think it comes off as a little spammy to me personally. Like, I get these emails every week from people, and sometimes I'm like, John asking for more money. You know what I mean? Where it's like, when I'm posting content for myself and my clients on a daily basis, it's more of like an educational, trust building perspective, where there's not a whole lot of cold outreach. I mean, I don't do any type of cold outreach. My clients don't do cold outreach. They just get DMs from people, asking, hey, I want to do a call. I never knew I could passively invest on real estate. And I think when you change that approach from like that spammy email list subscriber type outreach to like adding value and reaching from that direction, I think people realize that it really transforms their business and how they drive leads, to raise more capital and whatnot. So.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We've talked about this a ton of times. The main goal of that I've used, and I've seen you, and others use LinkedIn and social media for, is to transform your outreach from cold to warm. And not only warm, from outbound to inbound, because it makes it so that you don't really have to reach out to people. You just post content and you engage with others, and then people recognize you as the go-to person for whatever that thing, that niche that you have, right? And so establishing that niche and establishing that brand, that's probably the most important part of posting consistently, because it's not the content as much it is as showing up and being recognized as that expert in that thing, because people aren't necessarily going to remember everything that you post, all the content, but they are going to remember you and showing up every day, or, all the time. So that's a huge, huge benefit there. I'd love for you to kind of talk about it and some of the tips, some of the tricks, get deep. Let's check under the hood here. We're going to see what is it that actually works and what doesn't work, for that matter.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to what works and what doesn't work, I'd kind of split it between two kind of easy to break down things for people out there. I think the biggest mistake that I see on a daily basis is the formatting or the structure of the post. So many people out there, we talk about this a lot, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but people scroll about 10 football fields worth of content a day. If your content is not formatted and structured correctly, there's a 0% chance that it's going to get read, engaged with, and that people are going to want to reach out. Because if they can't read the content, they're not going to be emotionally connected to you, to Yona or to Jesse or whoever, and they're not going to build that connection to want to reach out. So there's so many people out there who write in massive blocks of text or paragraphs or whatnot. When I'm writing a post, Yona, I think to myself, how can I take someone from the top to the bottom as fast as possible, get my point across as fast as possible, and, hit them with a call to action at the end. There's nothing wrong with writing a post that's I've had viral posts that are 5 seconds long, that are 7 seconds long, that are 10 seconds long. I think there's this myth that I have to write this novel in order to get this engaged with. And it's That's actually true. The exact opposite. Yeah. I tell everybody shorter form content is better. Think less is more, little sentences. And how can I take someone from the top to the bottom, as fast as possible? If someone is out there listening and you just began restructuring your post like that, I guarantee in week 1, you would see a difference in engagement pretty much automatically. And then, the second thing that I would hit on, and again, just more, free tips for people out there and how to drive more engagement and build a better brand on LinkedIn is, when it comes to the post itself, I'm such a big believer in spending as most time as possible on the hook. And it's that first line. And it goes back to kind of what I hit in the beginning where, people are scrolling thousands of yards of content a day. You have to be that tiny fish in that entire ocean that makes someone stop, read, engage, and then execute a call to action. And it's a lot easier said than done. Some tips for writing, good hooks. I would use I use the word polarizing or something that's going to, cut and stop someone right there. And then I would also recommend that people incorporate numbers into their posts. Looking at the data for me over the last 2 years and all the posts that have hit 100,000 impressions, it was some type of polarizing type post or, hook. And then it also had some type of number in it. If it's, I use the Tesla one or something a lot all the time, but I could have invested 50,000 into this, but instead I did this. I have that polarizing, juxtaposing view with numbers in it. And every single post that's hit 100,000 impressions for me and for my clients has had that. So
yeah, it's such great points. And I want to reiterate a couple things that you said here and kind of expand upon. The first thing you were talking about, the content itself. A lot of us have this misconception that you have to have so much jam-packed into the post, right? Like this is the only thing anyone's ever going to read. And you want to make sure to get everything in there. And when in fact, that's going to turn people off. And it's a little bit harder now that LinkedIn has expanded the number base. I remember years ago, and I don't remember when exactly they changed this, but it used to be 1,300 characters. You had a limit. And if you went over that, it'd be in the red and you couldn't go further. And that to me actually helped when I was starting out on LinkedIn to cut things down and figure out how to say things much shorter and how to take out, edit posts and cut things down and say things more concise. And the same thing on Twitter. I mean, Twitter, you have 280 characters. Now they're expanding that as well. They've expanded that for Twitter Blue, but it allows you to it teaches you, if you're consistent at it, at getting a strong point across in as few words as possible. And that's one of the most powerful tools in copywriting, is saying, you can say the same thing, but in fewer words. That's going to be more impactful. And so, you don't want to, exactly like you said, people are scrolling so much. You want to get from point A to point B to point C in as quickly and as painlessly as possible, really. And having long paragraphs, it's just hard, especially if, someone's scrolling on their phones. They're not going to read it. They're just going to skip over it. It's just going to be too painful to get through. And so keep the sentences short, put a space between each sentence. That's really, really important things. And then I want to touch on what you said there about the hooks. You cannot underestimate the hook, especially on LinkedIn, where you're only going to see the first line or the first two lines. And so for someone to hit expand or see more, that's not going to happen unless you make it that they need to. And I'm not saying clickbait. Do not use clickbait. That's going to really cause distrust very quickly. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've literally unfollowed, or just because they've used clickbait. It's like, why would you do that? There's such a better way to get across. And yes, I've done it. I've done it a couple of times, and have admitted to my errors. But you have a really 3 seconds or less to capture someone's attention. And like you said yesterday on our live, spend 90% of your time focusing on getting that hook hammered down so that people will click that expand.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't know who said this quote, but it's something to the effect of, I'd way rather have a post with a 10 out of 10 hook and like 5 out of 10 content than 10 out of 10 content with a 5 out of 10, hook, because it's just not going to stop the scroll. It's not. If you can't get people to click see more on LinkedIn, the post will fail. So yeah, I mean, I talked about it yesterday, and some people think it's crazy, but I use the 90-10 rule when it comes to writing hooks, or content in general. Like, literally if you should be spending and the hook could just be one sentence, but there's nothing wrong with spending 15 minutes on that one sentence and then spend 10 minutes on everything else, because as long as everything else is formatted correctly and there's no runoff sentences, it's pretty much, you can kind of go wherever you want with the actual meat of the content. But if you miss the point, if you miss the mark on the hook, then the entire post is going to fall off. So
how do you feel about other types of media on using LinkedIn? Video, using audiograms, these type of things, or carousels, which, really similar to Instagram carousels, which they've discontinued in the picture form, but still have in the PDF form of using a carousel. What are your takes on that? Or are you just focused on kind of the long form content?
Yeah. And again, I'm no expert at the algorithm and whatnot, but I think when you're switching things up, every once in a while, once a week or something like that on LinkedIn, I think the algorithm almost likes that, just new, fresh content, because I've had months where I've posted nothing but a picture and then long form and whatnot, or, a picture in short form. And then all of a sudden I'll just do no picture in short form, and it'll blow up and it'll go crazy. I don't know if it's that little switch or whatnot, but I tell everybody to experiment and to try different things. I'm not a huge video guy personally. There's probably a lot of people out there who are. I remember, I don't know if I don't see his stuff as much anymore, but Dustin Hendrickson used to be an awesome video guy who crushed it. And I loved watching his videos. And if anyone's listening, go check out his account. He's an awesome guy,
What happened to
anyways,
Dustin?
But Dustin, if you're listening, we need you back, brother. But he's an awesome guy anyways. But I tell everybody, when you're looking at your content flow on LinkedIn, look at it over a long-term perspective. Look at it, from 3 to 6 months and do some analysis there. If you're just man, I tried one video last week and it sucked, you're probably not in the right mindset that you should be in. But I think it's always good to try different things on there. Hey, if you've never done a carousel, do a carousel. I know people who are wildly successful at that are driving some really good engagement right now. If you've never done a video, do that. If you're only doing videos, try the short form and start, sprinkling those in once a week, for a couple months, and just look at that long-term perspective. But overall, I'm a huge believer in trying different things, and then, look at the data and analyze the data to see, what's working. And then when you find something that's working, 10x and double down on that to incorporate it consistently into your content.
So how do you go about analyzing the data? Because that's something that is hard. I mean, I know I personally use something called Shield app.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you have other ways or other tricks to kind of analyzing that data.
Yeah, I use Shield and then I just keep an Excel sheet anyways that I've kept over the last 2 years. And, when I'm analyzing the data, I'm looking at impressions, the data points, impressions, reactions, and then also, DMs or leads that come from each post. I'll try to battle track that in my Excel sheet. Shield is great. I have Shield. That's more of kind of the impressions piece, but like actual leads. Because I've written posts that have, hit 100K impressions that have gotten no leads. And then I've written posts that have gotten 2,000 impressions that have gotten me a dozen leads and whatnot with investors. So it's important to, I think, track that as well. But I think when you're analyzing the data, and I'm a super data driven type person, I think it's really important to look at, impressions, reactions, and leads and seeing how that kind of filters into your business as a whole. Because I think it could be, a really critical tool, because I'm a huge believer, and you talk about this, we both do all the time, but, repurposing content and how that works. And I think when I look at, my spreadsheet that has my last 2 years of posts, I can easily rack and stack, my top 25 posts and really, in theory, there's a whole month's of content right there for me, which I can just continue to repost and repurpose and whatnot. And I think if you're out there not repurposing content, I think you're probably wasting a lot of time, to be honest, because there's gold in there and not everyone's going to always see your post. I got to get a little bit better at it. I'm turning into these past couple of times, I've just been copy and paste. I don't recommend doing that. I recommend at least tweaking it a little bit. But, I have copy and pasted like 100,000 impression posts and it has hit 100K. Again, and then I have copy and pasted and I've gone from 100K to like 5K. So, right. But I think repurposing is huge. So
yeah, it goes back to, just testing things and trying different things out. But the repurposing, one of the things that I've said in the past, why it's so important, or reposting, even the copy and pasting, because, number one, you'll, in 6 months from now, you have more people that are going to be following you that would never have seen that when you posted it 6 months ago. Secondly, you have people that even if they did see it, they're not going to remember, right, everything. Most people, I mean, unless they have like a crazy memory like I do, that they remember, verbatim what you posted 6 months ago. And then thirdly, and I said this recently, the most important things and the most important lessons need to be repeated over and over again. And so it's important to keep saying the same things over and over again. And so I love that. I do that all the time. And I'm a big fan of that. But I'd love to hear, our listeners, you guys are keeping this podcast going, and I appreciate it. Just take a moment to kind of just share my gratitude for everyone who has subscribed to this podcast, who has listened to over the years and has shared feedback. I love getting feedback. I love hearing, someone just today posted on LinkedIn. I just listened to Yonah Weiss's podcast. Happened to be, he said, I was talking with someone on the show recently about Twitter, about retweet and that kind of community over there. And this person posted on LinkedIn and on Twitter about how this podcast is amazing. So I love getting that feedback. But again, I'd love to hear from anyone out there. So if you're listening to this and you've gotten any value from this, make sure to do a post about it. Hey, this great opportunity. We talk about all the time. What type of content should I post? How do I come up with content? Well, a great way is just sharing what you're experiencing. Right? It doesn't have to be like this, educational content that is sharing about cap rates or about, loan to value, or even about a deal that you did, right? There's so many stories in deals, right? Jesse, I mean, you can talk about this probably for months on end, every single deal that you've done, from, the investor calls you had, from dealing with property managers, from dealing with the acquisition, dealing with, the underwriting, the inspections. So many things happen throughout that. And you can create so much content around that. And people are going to get to know you and your brand and what you do through doing that. But even just listening to a podcast like this, say, hey, I just listened to this podcast, Weiss Advice with Jesse and Yonah. I learned 3 things about posting on LinkedIn. Here they are. 1, 2, 3. Boom. You got a great piece of content.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And something I get hit with all the time with people starting out is, Jesse, I have nothing to post about. And it's like, oh my gosh, stop saying that, because you have $1 million worth of things to post about, I assure you. Because again, Yonah, it could be as simple as, hey, I went to go view this property and here were 3 lessons that I learned, or something along those lines. Like, you have something in your journey over the last 6 months that you can write about. And I tell everybody, when it comes down to how do I generate more ideas, to write about, I pull out my notepad sometimes, and I'll do this like once a month now. I used to do it weekly, but I do it about once a month now where, I'll just think about conversations I've had, stories I've had over the last couple months or since the last time I pulled my notepad, and I'll just start bulleting things out and I'll be like, oh, that's a post. That's a post. That's a post. That's a post. And it could be as simple as a conversation I had with a buddy coffee. I think I wrote a post one day, like, my buddy makes 500,000 a year and lives paycheck to paycheck. Like, that was a viral post that I wrote that came from meeting one of my past colleagues for coffee. And it was like, I turned that into a viral, literally LinkedIn post just from a cup of coffee that I had with him. And it was like, I tell everyone, you have so many $1 million ideas. You just got to get it down on paper and get it down on a notepad. If it just starts as bullet points, then take that bullet point and just build it into a short form post. And you could have a month's worth of posts ideas in literally just a short period of time.
You'll have endless content that way. And at a certain point, when you're doing this, it turns into like everything you do is like content.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, but it's a weird experience. I mean, not to, some people are, especially like on Twitter, like people just like something happens, they say something, they just like tweet about it, but not to be that extreme about content, that like everything you're doing, you're just thinking about content, not to mean it like that, but you just experience like, oh, afterwards, okay, now I'll just jot it down, keep it open, Google Doc or something like that, a notepad where you just jot down the idea. And then later you can come back to it. Like you said, do it, once a week, but it can be just keep it open all the time. And then when something happens, just jot down that idea and you'll come back to it to create the actual content around it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so doable and it's easy and people can start from anywhere. I get told all the time of like, Jesse, I can't start. I think something difficult for a lot of new people out there is the consistency aspect. But there's a lot of platforms. I use what's called Taplio, where I can plan out my posts for the week and whatnot and schedule them. So I'm not, writing them the day of or anything like that. It's already scheduled out for the week. But there's plenty of ways to overcome, those obstacles. The hardest part is just starting. Yeah. And, I think a lot of people quit in that starting, period. But I was in that, you were in that period at one point, Yona. I was in that period getting a couple reactions a day, a couple hundred impressions a day. We've all been there. All great creators have been there. It's just the reason we are where we are today is because we pushed through that, time period and got to the other side. And if you're in that time period right now, it's okay. I've been there. You just got to keep posting.
Yeah. And I think it's probably something that has come with you from your experience in the military also is just, it may not, you just got to do it. And you realize that you're going to accomplish something just by putting the reps in and doing it over and over again until you'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so true. 100%.
Well, Jesse, the time has come to jump into what we'd like to call the final four. These are four questions I ask all my guests. First question is, what's the worst job you ever had?
Oh, man. Yeah, in college, this was stupid, but in college, I was a bouncer at one of the bars in my college town and just dealing with drunk idiots all the time and stuff like that. And I think one night I got like punched in the face even. And I was like, I think it was in that moment, where I had an epiphany where I was like, this is active income. I need to find something that's passive income. And I think like a month later, my father and I bought my college house or something like that. So yeah, worst job ever. Don't do it. Definitely.
Okay, I won't.
Yeah.
Second question. What's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Not a real estate book, but just like a life book was Tuesdays with Morrie. And it's a book about a college professor who gets Lou Gehrig's disease and spends the last like 6 months of his life meeting with one of his past students and telling him like stories of his life and just looking back. And I think why it was like a shift for me personally is just like all the time I'm super busy and so many people listening can relate to this. Like, we got to do more deals. We got to do more calls. We got to do this and this and this and this and this. But, this professor, when he gets to the end of his life, he never cared about any of that. All he cared about was, his family and the relationships and the experiences that he had with the people that he loved. So Tuesdays with Morrie is a really good, just lifestyle, like paradigm shift book for me. Yeah.
Wow. Brought back memories. Literally, I haven't thought about that book.
Really?
For 25 years, literally.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I read that in high school and
okay.
It was, and now you know how old I am. And that was a huge, huge impactful book for me as well at that time. But Blast from the Past. Yeah. Awesome book. Awesome. Third question. What's a skill or talent that you would like to learn? And this could be anything.
Yeah. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I will. in the next 2 to 3 years here, I promise. I want to like start playing the guitar and get more into music. I really love music and stuff like that. I was terrible at playing instruments like earlier in my life, like in, middle school or whatever. But I think if I were to pick up any skill, it would be just to play the guitar. And I think it's also like going to be something like really therapeutic too, that I'm going to really enjoy. So.
Oh, good for you. It can be. It's really awesome. It's a fun skill to have. That's for sure. Fourth and final question. What does success mean to you?
Yeah, I think success for me personally, it's not defined by how much money we make while we're here on the earth. It's going to be defined by the people that we impact. And, my goal is to help and impact as many people as possible. If that's through, real estate investing and helping people attain financial freedom, or just, someone out there listening who commits to building their brand, over the next 6 months and goes on to raise, multi 7 figures, in 2024. And it was like, man, I listened to that episode of Yona and Jesse, and it like gave me that shift, because when I tell everyone to go back and listen to the Yona, your episode with John Asperian, because that's really something that I've kind of drawn on over the past few years. So I hope somebody listens to this episode, understands like the power of brand building, and gets on social media this year and builds something really powerful that I know is going to generate 7 figures in revenue over the next several years. So
awesome. Love that. And I love to see it also. I love when, we do something and it impacts other people. And that's really a lot of what I feel is success as well. How you can help others, how you can impact others. That's where you're going to see the most change in the world. So I love that. Jesse, it's really been awesome. I appreciate you coming on the show. How can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, hit me up on LinkedIn, DM me. I don't have a virtual assistant or anything like that. So some people DM me and like we'll do a call and be like, whoa, is this really? Yeah, it's really me. Like I don't have any robots or VAs or anything like that. So shoot me a DM. Let me know, you heard me on this podcast. If you want to learn more about the ghostwriting or anything like that, just shoot me a note and we can do a call and see if it's the right fit, and we can go from there. So
awesome. Love it. Thank you so much again. This has really been fun. I think this episode is going to be very impactful for a lot of people, and hopefully it's going to create a lot of content for both you and me as well.
Yeah, Yona, thanks for having me on, brother. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again all the way to the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.